Hey, my name is Jejo. I'm co-founder of Say Labs, and you're watching Taking Stock.
2 minutes to go into the close. Let's do it, folks. On this Tuesday afternoon, a fair bit of profit taken and a fair bit of selling pressure across the major market indexes. That was not necessarily the tail of the tape shortly after this morning's opening auction. That's actually when we saw the Dow 30 components reach a fresh all-time high, but the afternoon session had something else entirely in mind. At this hour, we are expected to see the S&P 500, the benchmark index, down about 0.9%. Comparable selling, but well-off session lows for the Dow, which is down about 0.3. The New York Stock Exchange Composite Index right about flat, and the small caps actually in positive territory for the Russell 2000, up about 0.25%. Welcome to the show, one and all. You're watching Taking Stock. I'm your host, JD Durkin. Mere moments away, my friends, from the ringing of the iconic closing bell here at the big board. We got the team from Tyler, ticker symbol TYL, here at the New York Stock Exchange. They are set to bring about a close to today's closing auction. Some huge headlines on the day. We'll bring you much more throughout the next hour. Disney tapping Josh tomorrow as its next CEO. Walmart officially joining the $1 trillion market cap club. We got the SpaceX XAI merger set to be the largest of all time, and the newest announcement from Anthropic absolutely throttling software stocks on the day, and renewed concerns for investors perhaps about the state of negotiations and deal making between OpenAI on the one hand and the powerhouse NVIDIA on the other. We will pick up our market coverage with Dion Pouncil right after the bell, but time now for the closing bell rung by Tyler here at the New York Stock Exchange. That was a long bell for that one. All right, and on this Trading Tuesday, the team from Tyler, lots of alliteration here on the show. All right, your final tail of the tape on this Tuesday, February 3rd, the S&P down 0.8%, the Dow down 0.3, the New York Stock Exchange Composite Index flat to the downside, down 0.02%, pretty negligible move, all things considered, and the small caps having a strong session up in positive territory, 0.3%. Dion Pouncil joins the show now once again, one of our favorite kickoff guests for the broadcast. He is the chairman and president of Hybrid Advisors. Thanks for being here. Nice to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me again. I appreciate it.
As you take a look up at the markets, not at all-time highs, but all things considered, for a very nervous tape today, we're still right about at all-time highs. What do you look up and see in these markets?
Yeah, you see the volatility, not a strange flight to safety, but I think the defensive markets and the consumer markets, as you mentioned, Walmart just hit $1 trillion. I think that's going to be pretty exciting for this year.
How big of a deal is that for Walmart? You talk about the exclusive $1 trillion market cap club. It's usually just these tech stocks. I remember when Apple was the first one down here back in like 2018, and now you add Walmart to the list. It's a big deal.
Well, you think about that, plus they're moving to selling robotics, right? And so you have the opportunity for defense, you have the opportunity for consumers. And I think with the volatility of the market this year, I think it's going to be a charge up in Walmart.
What do you see when you look at precious metals? What a wild story for gold and silver Friday.
Yes.
After the announcement of Kevin Warsh to the Fed, we had all that heavy selling to the downside. Continued into yesterday's session. A little bit of a bounce back for the metals today.
Yeah, a lot of news around metals. So one of my picks for over the next 12 to 24 months, I think silver is going to outperform gold. And if I'm looking at long only on gold or silver, I would actually do relative value arbitrage. I would long silver and I would short gold and hold that over the next 12 to 24 months. The ratio of silver is going to be outperforming gold, and that's one of my predictions.
Do you like silver on the technicals? You like it for its industrial use cases that gold doesn't apply to? What's kind of part of your
utility,
thesis there?
Right?
The utility,
silver has everything from tech to defense, everything you need as far as operating technology and operating in the real world. Silver has way more utility than gold.
Let me ask you what you're seeing in the defense aerospace names like Palantir, Lockheed Martin, RTX, also known as Raytheon.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on in that sector of stocks right now.
I've been bullish on Palantir. You can't bet against Peter Thiel. And I think cybersecurity actually is the #1 threat to humanity over time. So you want to be in tune with every single thing that Palantir is doing, especially with the access to the data that they have.
We are expected to see the SpaceX XAI merger be, in fact, not just a big one, the largest one of all time. Talk about the state of Elon.
I think when we're talking about orbital space and we're talking about orbital data centers, they're definitely going to lead the pack. And then you combine that with the satellites and the technology for internet. They're changing the game. It's going to be a vertically integrated solution, and he's leading the pack.
We know the importance of corporate earnings season. We're really right in the thick of it right now. We got a handful of the Mag 7, these mega cap, big splashy tech companies already reported. We've got a few others coming up over the course of the next few closes. And of course, NVIDIA way later in the month of February. How do you evaluate what we've seen so far from earnings season, especially out of the most consolidated names in this S&P 500?
Well, I mean, you bring up NVIDIA. I think the AI is actually leading the charge on keeping the market afloat. If we take out the FANG or we take out the Mag 7, the market's pretty stagnant, right? And so we need these earning reports to keep the activity, keep the action up, and keep the cash into the equity market. I think when we look at that opposed to how the yields are going to do, the yields will be average 3 to 5% this year, but I think AI is going to help keep the equities up.
Are there any other big catalysts or moments of note? Could be pieces of economic data, other earnings, things on your radar that you think the average investor out there would benefit from paying a little bit more attention to right now, Dion?
Absolutely. I think the Fed announcement of who Trump's nominee is and if that actual change will happen will be a catalyst in the market. And I also think the private credit markets are going to be something to pay attention to as well over time.
All right, Dion Pouncil, Chairman and President of Hybrid Advisors. My man, you're always welcome back here on the show. It's nice to have you here again. Of course, take good care of yourself. Skylar, grab your microphone. Howard, you and I are going to head this way and go for a walk. We're going to bring us the latest Polymarket event contract odds. But first, we're going to say hello to the Launch Live Now fellas, Taylor and Dan. Thank you, boys, for being here, one and all. All right, the latest Polymarket odds as participants are trying to figure out what will be, you're going to love this one, the Best Picture winner for the upcoming Academy Awards. 1% chance it is Frankenstein. 3% odds it is Marty Supreme, 7% Hamnet, 20% Sinners. Sinners was a really good movie, and 68% chance it is the Leonardo DiCaprio-led One Battle After Another. Just a few small beers. Timothy Chalamet, by the way, is expected to be the odds-on favorite to win Best Actor, even though he was not in that particular film. More than $11 million in total trade volume on this particular event contract. The Oscars telecast is scheduled for Sunday, March 15th. Howard, we'll take a look at two notables here before we take a quick toss to break. First up, this ETF. This is the Invesco AI and Next Gen Software ETF, ticker symbol IGPT. After we had that announcement from Anthropic releasing a new AI productivity tool for lawyers, man, oh man, we saw the software stocks get absolutely throttled on the day. The most weighted names in this ETF, Micron, NVIDIA, Meta, Alphabet, as well as AMD. Morgan Stanley analyst writing, we view this as a sign of intensifying competition and thus a potential negative for a handful of that stocks. We see that reflected in this particular ETF. Names like Thomson Reuters and FactSet also caught up in that profit taking in a big way on this Tuesday afternoon. Howie, let's swing around. We'll take a look here at FedEx reaching not just a 52-week high, how about an all-time high for the team at FedEx. Wells Fargo upgrading the stock to overweight from equal weight ahead of the company's Investor Day, which will happen next week, boosting its price target to 380. Wells Fargo not alone. Bernstein analysts also upgrading FedEx to outperform today, raising its own price target all the way to 427. Shares of FedEx up more than 20% so far here in 2026. All right, today and for the next few days here on Taking Stock, we are bringing you inside full coverage of the Ondo Summit 2026, which is going on as we speak right here in New York City. FinTech TV lead anchor Remy Blair now sits down with Ondo's head of DeFi, Matthew Blumberg. Take a look.
Welcome back to live from Ondo Summit 2026 in New York City. Now, Ondo Finance has surpassed $2.5 billion in total value locked, cementing its position as the largest issuer of both tokenized U.S. Treasuries and stocks. Now, Ondo controls over 50% of the total market share for tokenized equities, and with the recent expansion of Ondo Global Markets to the Solana network, Ondo now supports over 200 tokenized stocks and funds within decentralized protocols, and that accounts for approximately 65% of all individual tokenized RWAs issued on the Solana network by asset count. Well, joining me as we kick off the Ondo Summit is Matt Blumberg, who's head of DeFi at Ondo Finance. Great to have you here. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. It's very exciting to be here. I think we're going to see a lot of really cool stuff coming out of the summit. So I'm happy to kick it off.
Yeah, so this is the second Ondo Summit taking place. So what are your expectations as we kick off the session today?
I think this year we're really going to, every year I feel like we try to get our message across that the way we see tokenization is really truly about access, right? And access is not just about being able to buy assets, right? We have tokenized equities, ETFs. As you mentioned, we're like the market leader there, available outside the US, right? For investors who don't have access to these assets any other way. But access is also about, being able to own your assets, truly self-custody them. It's about being able to use your assets the way you want, when you want. It's about being able to create new financial products and services based on these assets as this, financial building block that's really just come to market in the last few months.
Yeah, so you mentioned building blocks. So I want to ask you about how you view tokenization and what role you expect it to play in the future of finance.
It's a great question. So I think the way that I sort of see it is what stablecoins did for the US dollar. That's what tokenization is doing for traditional financial products and services. It's democratizing access, right? It's enabling enormous amounts of innovation coming out on top. So a lot of the use cases that we've seen for things like stablecoins, whether it's using them in decentralized lending protocols, using them in DEXs, using them in decentralized perpetuals protocols, collateral. I mean, there's a whole gambit of use cases. Everywhere that stablecoins have made that possible to date, I think we really haven't seen builders empowered with the innovation that they need to be able to open that up for traditional assets, right? So I think, the classic sort of use case is if you use a traditional financial broker today, your assets are locked in. You have vendor lock-in. You're living in like a walled garden, right? With tokenization, all of a sudden you have the freedom to use your assets the way you want to. And so one good example is margin, right? If you want to borrow cash against your portfolio, today that's very much restricted to either people who are willing to pay very high rates at retail brokerages or people that are like ultra high net worth individuals. Elon Musk doesn't sell his Tesla stock, right? He borrows dollars against it. But as a typical user, the rates that you pay today are extremely, non-competitive. There is no competition in this market. Through DeFi and through tokenization, we open up a truly novel financial market for buyers and sellers, borrowers and lenders to come together and be able to, price what the risk of each of these assets is in real time. And so for the first time as a retail user, you can actually gain access to borrowing cash against your, stock portfolio without paying an arm and a leg in funding.
Well, it does seem as though the events are about to kick off here at Ondo Summit, so I'll let you go. Thank you so much for joining me today, and thank you so much for sharing your insights and perspective.
Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure.
Let's do it, folks. Welcome back to the broadcast. You are watching Taking Stock live from the trading floor of the New York Stock Exchange. Time now for the latest headlines you need for your Tuesday afternoon in the worlds of fintech, crypto, and artificial intelligence. Come on through, bud. The floor is yours. First up, the crypto majors at this hour are down. Bitcoin is down 2.5%. ETH, the least hard hit of the major crypto giants, down 1.1. Solana selling off at this hour more than 3%. Next up, SpaceX has officially acquired xAI, and in doing so, created the world's most valuable private company. It all signals Elon Musk's ambitious plan to build space-based data centers in order to power the next era of artificial intelligence. And finally, at this hour, shares of data and legal services companies sliding all across the board in a very sharp way after Anthropic rolled out new AI tools for the legal industry, stoking fresh fears among market participants that AI could rapidly disrupt traditional software and information businesses. All right, and part of our continuing coverage here from Ondo Summit 2026, FinTech TV's very own lead anchor, Remy Blair, sits down with the CEO of StockTwits, Mr. Howard Lindzen. Take a look.
Welcome to FinTech TV. I'm Remy Blair. Retail investors now account for 25% of all stock market trading volume, nearly double their market share from just a few years ago. Well, joining me here at the Ondo Summit to talk about the degen economy and the future of trading is co-founder and CEO of StockTwits, the largest social platform for investors and traders, Howard Lindzen. Howard, great to have you here.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Well, first and foremost, let's talk about the degen economy. So for viewers out there who may not be familiar, what exactly is it?
Well, it's a term I came up with. I think it's funny. So I use it in the most positive light because I own and operate two degenerates, a 26-year-old and a 28-year-old. They don't gamble. one invests, one vapes, one bets. But so I should say bets, and he'll call me up and talk about parlays. I'm like, who are you? Like, there's such terrible bets. But degenerate economy is, we live in this world where 5 years ago, if I was an investor in Robinhood, 5 years ago, Vlad and Robinhood were in a lot of trouble because confetti, if you put on an investment or a trade and confetti came down, the world was like, oh my goodness, you're gamifying investment. And that's what the world thought degeneracy was in 2020. Today, in 2026, you can forget the confetti. They removed the confetti, but you can parlay a stock trade with a basketball bet. So if you search on Robinhood, this is not that, not big. You can go from betting on NVIDIA during the day or investing in NVIDIA in the day to betting on sports at night. I think that's pretty big degeneracy. This is humans. This is the ultimate game. Gaming is a huge business. The markets are the ultimate game. Yoshi over there from Alpaca, Robinhood, Coinbase, Kraken. The ultimate game turns out to be the market, which is something I always thought would happen. Why play games when you can play the real game? There is degeneracy that goes along with that. It's not just the retail, it's the institutions with 2 times, 3 times averaged ETFs. Everybody's unfortunately participating in this game, so buyer beware. But really an amazing time for people to learn the language of the markets and to be investors.
Yeah, and you mentioned that it's 2026, and when we think back to 2020, it is, right? So much has happened. I know, it feels like it should be 2030 by now, given everything that's happened in the first month of this year. But we have gone from the COVID pandemic era to 2026, and we're here at the Ondo Summit, and we're talking about the rails that were utilized for crypto moving into institutional adoption. So first and foremost, what are some of the headwinds and tailwinds you're paying attention to, especially when it comes to what affects the StockTwits audience?
Well, for the StockTwits audience, they want to be left alone. Same with Twitter, same with any social network. On Google, which I use YouTube, I lean back and I trust the algorithm. On Twitter, I can't use the app because it's wired to make me angry because of the way engagement works, right? You're leaning forward in your phone. I don't really use Instagram, but I watch my daughter and my wife use Instagram. I think they get great use out of that and TikTok, but again, a lot of negativity.
Yeah.
At StockTwits, our idea is real time. If you post a message, whether you like it or not, we keep it chronological because that's the way the market works, right? It's just a long feed of trades and information, and it's up to the user to curate. So the future I see is more. Again, like any game, especially a global game like the markets, I just feel people want to play the game. What's major change is we went from a world of globalization, which was like, let's do business with China, let's free trade agreements, to a world of deglobalization. I think that's just finally, it's a 2-year-old, 3-year-old trend, but it's finally like, America wants Greenland, America's fighting with Canada. These are not things that you would have predicted, but 6 months ago or a year ago. So it's a very new trend. I don't think investors, they're used to tech, they're used to software stocks, they're used to the FANG, and now you've got defense, you've got rockets, you've got Europe because of, you've got global stocks working, you have wars, you have, so I think that's what people are truly thinking about. And you can see it now playing out in gold and silver and commodities and graphite. So it's very interesting.
Well, Howard, we will have to leave it there. But I look forward to welcoming you back onto our set at the New York Stock Exchange. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Let's do it. Welcome back to the show. Now in our continuing coverage of Ondo Summit 2026 right here in New York City. Remy Blair, the lead anchor of FinTech TV, sits down with the great Jay Jog of Say Labs, a longtime friend of ours here on Taking Stock. Take a look.
Welcome to FinTech TV. I'm Remy Blair. Real world assets are migrating to the blockchain at a record pace, and Say is positioning itself as the primary destination. Well, following the recent launch of Ondo Finance's USDY on the network, Say has integrated a $1.2 billion pool of capital backed by U.S. Treasuries into its ecosystem. This move does bring institutional grade yield to Say's Paralyze EBM. So joining me live at Ondo Summit here in New York City is Jay Jog, co-founder of Say Labs. Welcome back to FinTech TV.
Thanks for having me.
Well, 2026 is well underway and we're here at Ondo Summit. So in terms of the representatives of TradFi, DeFi, and even policymakers, what do you make of the conversations that are taking place at the summit?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that's becoming very clear now is that institutions are starting to see the kind of traction that would justify them starting to come and invest the resources that are necessary to start actually building on-chain. In Say's case, for example, we went live with our Paralyzed EBM in 2024. And since then, basically all the traction we're looking at has been up and to the right. There's been over 100 million wallets that have interacted with the chain, over 1 million daily active users, over 5 billion transactions that have happened on-chain. And when you start to see traction like this, that's when institutions get excited. So in the past year for Say, we've had 5 different funds that have launched. There's been BlackRock, Brevin Howard, Hamilton Lane, Apollo, and Laser. And most recently, as you said as well, Ondo launching USDY. So I think what we're going to start seeing in the next year is even more and more institutions that are launching things on-chain. And one thing that's really special about Ondo USDY is USDY as an asset is permissionless. So it can be used as a building block to support new types of applications getting built on top. A lot of the other RWAs that have come to market so far, they're permissioned. So you give them money, then they give you a token, but you can't really do anything with that token. And that's why I'm really excited about USDY. It becomes a primitive that a lot of people can make use of moving forward as well.
Yeah, and speaking of moving forward, there are a lot of innovations and trends that we're watching, but what do you expect to unfold as we head into the new year and why?
Yeah, so I think there's 2 big trends that we're seeing right now. The first is more institutional adoption, as I was alluding to before. And the second is an uptick in a lot of the crypto X AI use cases. Even in the past week and a half, there's been like all this stuff around Malt Bot and then Malt Book and just a ton of stuff happening from the AI side. And one thing that's really interesting to me is this concept of having these AI agents, like the ones that Malt Bot allows you to set up, using stablecoins such as USDY or USDC to be able to actually transact directly on chain. So if you have these AI native agents, then they should be making use of AI native financial tools to be transacting on chain. And one of the things that is going to be very helpful for that is this protocol called X402. It's something that Coinbase originally introduced. Say was one of the first projects set up as facilitator for that. And I think that's going to allow a lot more financial activity to start happening on chain as well.
Yeah, and we continue to hear institutional adoption when it comes to digital assets and some of the technologies and innovations that are unfolding. But at an event like Ondo Summit, where we see a lot of institutions represented, it's not about when, but actually how. So what does all of this mean for the retail investor? And what does it mean in terms of timeline?
I think for the retail investor, it's going to democratize access to things that they didn't have before. So one example with USDY, you can think of it as a stable coin that gets yield. And if you look at other stable coins like USDC or USDT, which are backed by said Circle and Tether, you basically have to go to, let's say, Tether, you give them $1, and then in the back end, they'll invest that themselves and keep all the money for themselves. They're making like $10 billion plus in revenue each year from that. Most recently, they were raising it over a $500 billion valuation last year. And this is all money that, I mean, it's your users' money that users not get to keep for themselves. And candidly, that's pretty silly. Like users should be able to get access to whatever yield is earned from their cash, right? So that's why I think RWAs are going to help democratize that process. I think USDY will be one of those major building blocks. And I'm excited to see that happen with other types of asset classes as well. Beyond just treasuries, having that happen for securities and other types of assets, being able to make them more accessible to people, allowing people to invest in funds they otherwise might not be able to, and then have that be used as building blocks for things such as lending markets.
Well, Jay, great talking to you. And thank you so much for joining us with your insights and your perspective.
Thank you, Brad.
Thank you.
Welcome back. I'm Scarlett Sieber from Money 2020, and this is Jargon Translator, where we turn fintech jargon into plain English. Today's term, FBO. And no, it's not a new boy band. It stands for the benefit of. Here's the deal. FBO accounts are the legal backbone of fintech banking. When you open an account with a neobank, your money doesn't just sit in a vault with their logo on it. It sits in a pooled account at a sponsor bank labeled for the benefit of you and thousands of other customers. So why should you care? Compliance and safety. FBO structures let fintechs offer banking services without being banks. The sponsor bank holds the funds, provides FDI insurance, and keeps regulators happy, while the fintech handles the slick app experience and the customer experience. Here's the catch: transparency. If a fintech goes belly up, your money is still at the bank, but getting it back can be messy if records aren't exactly airtight. And FBO accounts don't always offer the same protections as traditional accounts, depending on how they're managed. So next time you brag about how cool your neobank app is, remember, your cash might just be chilling in an FBO account at a very traditional bank. FBO, because even the coolest fintech needs a boring old bank to hold that money. And that is your jargon translated.
And on this trading Tuesday, the S&P 500 down 0.8% on this Tuesday. But now, of course, it's all eyes on tomorrow morning. Before market open, we will get quarterly results from names like Uber, Eli Lilly, Novo Nordisk, as well as AbbVie. This time tomorrow, all eyes on Alphabet. We'll also hear from ARM Holdings, Qualcomm, Snap, and Elf Beauty. We'll also get the ADP jobs print crossing the wires tomorrow. That's going to do it for this Tuesday edition of Taking Stock. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch. We'll see you again live tomorrow from the big board.